What's up, everybody? It's your man Harris here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to use UUIDs in MySQL. Now, this is one of the most important things you can learn how to do as a database developer because it's the best way to guarantee that columns that you need to be unique in your database are truly unique. Now, I wanted to do a really short tutorial on this, but before you start using UUIDs, it's super important that you understand how to use them to structure your database and when to use them, because you really don't want to use UUIDs if you don't have a proper understanding of database structure and when and where to use them. So I've set up a quick little tutorial for us here on the left where we're going to be creating a database called clothing, and it's just a database for a website that sells clothes to customers. So the customers can create accounts and they can place orders. And we're going to be creating a database structure for this and use UUIDs in it to show you exactly what they are and why they're super useful. So let's go ahead and do the tutorial real quick. The code for this tutorial is in the description, so follow the link and download the code if you'd like to follow along. So first, make sure you're logged into MySQL. As you can see on the right here in my terminal, I'm logged into MySQL. And go ahead and create your database called clothing. And we're going to go ahead and do this command, use clothing, to go into our clothing database. And let's go ahead and create our first table called account. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this command over. Okay, so let's talk about this account table real quick. So this is a table that you're going to use when a customer creates an account on your website. So our first column is our user ID. So this is where we want to use a UUID. So every user that comes to your website and creates an account, you're going to want a unique identifier for that user. So many companies use something called auto increment, which means that for their first customer, they give them the ID 1, their second customer 2, their third 3, and so on. Now, this is not a good way to do it because of security concerns. Those user IDs would be very easily guessed, right? So you want to use something like UUID. And what UUID does is it generates a 36 long character string that contains numbers and letters, and it's very difficult to guess. It's also unique, so it'll always generate a unique ID for you that's 36 characters long. So that's why we have this column user ID and it's a varchar of 36 characters. And this is going to be our primary key, and it's not null. So another reason why you want this to be your primary key for your account table is that, for example, a lot of companies make the mistake of using like an email address or a username that the customer enters into their website as their primary key in their main account table. Now, the reason why this is bad is that this user ID that's the primary key of your account table is probably going to be referenced as a foreign key in all of your other tables, like down here in orders. As you can see in the last line, we have a foreign key, user ID, that references our account table up there. It references its user ID. So this column here in your main account table is probably going to be used on almost every table in your database. So if you use something like an email address or a username that the customer creates, then it's going to be nearly impossible or very difficult for you to change that. So if the customer wants to change their email or they want to change their username, they're not going to be able to do that very easily, because then you would have to go ahead and update every single table in your database to reflect that change because it's a foreign key constraint. So this makes it really difficult, and you've probably experienced this in your own life where you create an account on a website and the website doesn't allow you to change your username or your email address, which then you get customer complaints and people want to be able to change all of their data. So using something like a a UUID as your main user ID for each account is the best way to do it. And then you can store things like email addresses or usernames as general data that can be updated in the account table. So that's the best way to do it. So now that we've got our account table created, we're going to go ahead and finish out our orders table. So we're going to create our orders table. And let's go ahead and create our first account for a customer using the UUID, just like here. So all you have to do to use the UUID is you just say UUID, and then you do the open parentheses, close parentheses. So you run it like a function. So now you do have to make sure that up here in your account table, your user ID is a varchar 36 at least. So you have to have at least 36 spaces to fill in your UUID, because it will generate a 36 long character string of numbers and letters. So make sure that this is properly structured. Now we're going to go ahead and insert our first row in our account table. And I'm going to go ahead and copy that in. All right, so now we've got our first account created. Now when I go ahead and check the data, so I'm going to go ahead and say select user ID from account to pull up that new account that we just created, you're going to see the UUID in action. So I'm going to go ahead and paste this command, select user ID from account. And as you can see, this is our user ID for our first customer. It's a unique string, right? So this is going to be our main identifier for that customer in all of our tables that we need to have foreign keys in. So this will never change. The customer doesn't really need to change this ever. So this gives you full customizability where your customer can change anything they want in their account, and it won't affect your database because this is our main column, and this is something that the user never needs to see. And it also, since it's unique, it will guarantee that every user on your website has a unique code. So every time UUID generates, it will generate a unique string. So now that we've got our first customer created, we're going to go ahead and insert our order, our first order. So we're going to run this command, insert into orders. Now we're going to go ahead and copy this UUID that was generated here on our screen. So I'm just going to do Control-C and paste it into this command, the insert into command. So values, inside of our values, it's going to go into these two quotes here as our first entry. And I'm going to go ahead and paste that into MySQL. So I just inserted the first order. And if we go ahead and check our orders, select all from orders, you can see the data that was entered into orders. Our user ID is a foreign key constraint. So our user ID is in the order as a foreign key, and we have our order data here, the order ID and the address. Now, if you wanted to, you could also have your order ID be a UUID, right? But really the one that's most necessary and the most critical is making sure you use the UUID as your main identifier on your user account table, right? So that you guarantee that each user has a unique ID and that they can customize any other data that they want, like their email or their username or their phone number. You never want to use things like that as your main ID, again, because you want to be able to provide your customer maximum flexibility in changing their data, and you don't want to have any security concerns. So UUID is really the best way to do it right now, and is probably the most recommended way by experienced database developers. So anyway, again, the code for this is in the description, so feel free to download it, and I hope that gave you a good understanding of how to use UUIDs. Now, make sure you guys check out our sponsor, invoicebell.app, where you can create a free account to create invoices, estimates, and quotes. You can bill customers, save contacts, and much more. Now, this is the main template. It's very easy to use, and all of your documents are stored in the cloud. And again, it's free to use. So make sure you guys go on invoicebell.app and sign up for an account. Thank you so much for watching this video, and have a great night.